In Arena, your weapon is arguably the most important part of your kit. Some weapons are head and shoulders above the competition, and others are borderline unusable. Today, as part of our Madness series, we're going to go over a small but often overlooked category of weapons, the LMGs. The LMG, or light machine guns, are a weapon type exclusive to the Enforcer class. The LMGs usually has a high magazine capacity, and since it's part of the Enforcer class, it unfortunately also means your ammo penetration usually falls in the range of 0 to 35. Sub 40 penetration is unreliable even when trying to penetrate level 4 armor. Assault and Enforcer loadouts have access to level 4 or better helmets and armor, so unless you consistently get headshots, killing an opponent with sub 40 penetration ammo could be very difficult. It's also made even harder because most of the LMGs have really low ergonomics, making aiming a not so easy task, and also have very high recoil. This means generally the strategy is to hip fire with a tactical device and hope that your enemy can't aim very well. LMGs in Arena are pretty underwhelming right now. The large magazine capacity makes it easier to play aggressively, but only people who are experienced at hip firing can make good use of an LMG. Anyone playing a class with access to higher penetration bullets will usually always have the upper hand and be in a better position to sweep you, since you'll likely not be using headphones. So regarding armor when you're using light machine guns. As you know, light machine guns have very high recoil, so that means getting accurate fire on your opponent and putting them down before they get a chance to land shots on you is a pretty hard task to accomplish. As a result of that, you probably want to prepare for the worst and build your armor so that you could take at least a couple hits. So to start it off, we have our helmet. I chose the Vulcan 5 because it's a level 5 helmet that sports a pretty chunky face shield that's at level 4. It's a pretty high durability helmet at 200 true durability made out of combined materials, with combined materials being the second best material for destructibility in the game. This is a pretty good thing because that means whenever you're actually taking damage on your Vulcan, the rate at which your armor gets destroyed is a lot less than something made out of a worse material like steel or Titan. So that just means the longevity of your helmet is a lot better than other helmets of the same armor level, but made of different materials. Another nice feature that it has is that it sports a high ricochet chance. That means that regardless of the armor penetration, there's a pretty good chance that the bullet will be deflected on impact, which might just save your life sometimes. Of course, the higher the penetration, usually this ricochet chance matters less and less. Generally speaking, for most of your bullets that fall within the mid-40s and lower penetration, it's going to be able to stop quite a few of those kind of bullets. Now moving on to your face shield, the Vulcan 5 face shield is made of glass, which is unfortunately one of the weakest materials in the game right next to ceramic at 0.6 armor destructibility value. So you're not going to be able to take as much punishment as if you were going to be hit in the helmet. It has enough hit points so that it would at least be able to survive some punishment. So being a level 4, it's probably not going to survive a lot of those higher end bullets, meaning 40 penetration and above. But for a lot of the pistol rounds or just weaker penetration rounds, you'll be able to still take quite a few hits. Some final words on the helmet. In situations where you can help it, try to make sure that your helmet is pointing towards the most dangerous enemy if you're trying to minimize your damage. For example, if you get caught in a situation where you're reloading, try to point the top of your head down against your opponent so that they won't have access to hitting your face. I also decided to put on the Death Shadow face mask, a level 2 high ricochet, made of polymer. Being at armor level 2, it's obviously not the greatest thing in the world, but the high ricochet chance is what you're really after. Because theoretically, something even like M62s could be deflected by this high ricochet face mask. It's not really serving the same purpose as your Vulcan 5 to really be able to tank a bunch of bullets. It's really just there for a chance to be able to maybe deflect a bullet and save your life. So up next is your body armor. Now the body armor that I decided to go with is the Thor Concealable. And the reason why is because it has level 3 soft underarmor. And the way to really think about it intuitively is that you have your plates inserted into your armored vest or tactical rig, depending on which you choose. Once the bullets get through your armored plate, next up comes your second line of defense, which is your under armor. Level 3 under armor is definitely going to be better than level 2 under armor. You could think of it as your armor level plus your soft under armor. So 5 plus 3 is going to be better than 5 plus 2. Of course, the Thor concealable isn't the only option. Being an Enforcer class, you have a large selection of different armors that you could choose, a lot of which also have level 3 soft under armor. So for example, Zuck Digital Flora, the Redut M, Gen 4 High Mobility Kit, Defender 2, Gazelle, and for tactical rigs, the Bagari and the Anna M2. Any of these choices are very good armors. Now the reason why I chose the Thor concealable is simply because it's a lot cheaper. The base cost of a Thor concealable is a lot cheaper than a lot of these other armors that arguably provide better protection because they cover more areas with level 3 under armor. But for the most part, I think that the Thor concealable does a pretty good job for the price. Also, the Thor concealable doesn't inflict as many debuffs as something like the Defender 2 or the Zuck Digital Flora. If you want to take a look, right now, the Thor concealable with 2 Cult Locust plates has minus 3% movement speed, minus 3% turn speed, and minus 2% ergonomics. All for the price of 3,659 rating points. So if you take something like the Redut M, which provides more protection for more areas, and you put in the same plates, you notice that the debuffs are a lot higher. Minus 6% movement speed, minus 6% turn speed, and minus 5% ergonomics. So if that's something you don't really like to compromise on, you hate the feeling of being really slow and turning around a lot slower as well, that's something that you should really be considering. Also, if you take a look at the rating points value, it's a couple hundred points higher than when we had the Thor concealable. So if you really need to squeeze out every little bit, a couple hundred points is quite a lot to miss out on. Now quickly going over your actual armor plates, I chose 2 Cult Locust plates. And the reason why is because, yeah, I could put something like 1 level 6 front plate, but then I'd have to compromise on having only a level 4 back plate just to eat the cost. And my principle at least is that you want a more balanced protection of your armor, because although level 4 armor is good for a lot of those lower penetration rounds, in Arena where high penetration rounds are literally just a mouse click away, it's not really that good for most situations. So I think level 5 plates for both the front and the back is a much better choice than a level 6 front plate and a level 4 back plate, which is a lot more uneven. And also, I wouldn't really worry that much about adding side armor plates because it eats away at your mobility, and 2, they usually cost quite a bit of rating points. So if you're really trying to penny pinch and optimize your build, adding armor to an area where it won't really get hit that much anyways, most of your damage is going to be done to your front and back plates, there's not really that much of a need to add extra protection to your sides. Neck protection isn't all that important. You may notice that the Thor concealable doesn't have any neck protection. You might be considering going for something that has level 2 soft under armor protection, but at least provides neck protection. But let me give you a little anecdotal story. Sometimes I run the Zabralo, originally a level 6 armor that provides level 3 soft protection to basically every single part of your body. A single 7.62x39 PS bullet at 35 penetration is enough to kill you in a neck shot. So a single bullet could really just ruin your day. Now I'm not saying that it's completely useless. There are definitely times where having neck armor could save you for those lower penetration rounds. But for the most part, I take priority over getting level 3 soft under armor on the most important parts like your thorax. And as for some of the miscellaneous stuff, your armored rig doesn't really matter, and we'll go over this when we actually go over the weapon itself, but you're not really going to have any extra mags. It's really just there for cosmetic. And as for your medical supplies, I chose the AHF-1 just to stop your heavy bleeding and let you go for that last chance rush to get maybe an extra kill before you die. An argument can be made where you could replace that with an ETGC if you have enough rating points left over. And the reasoning behind that is that sometimes your healing could outpace your bleed out. Arguably that could keep you in the fight a lot longer than healing up all of your bleeds with the HF1 and being in a damaged state. But my recommendation, usually you're going to have quite a few bleeds, so in most situations, in my experience, the ETGC will not be able to outpace your bleeding, and you're just going to want to plug up all those holes before making that last push. Now going over the bullets really quickly, starting off with 7.62x54R, so this is going to be what your PKM and PKP are running. You have three choices. The highest one and the best option in my opinion is RFMJ at 33 penetration, 84 damage. Now the reason why I recommend this over something like SPBT and HPBT is that, one, it has the highest penetration value out of all of them, with a pretty respectable flesh damage at 84, meaning that if you hit someone in the face, you're definitely going to be able to one-tap them anyways. We'll go over this later when we talk about the weapons in particular. The PKM and PKP don't have a very fast fire rate, so you're not going to be able to take advantage of something like HPBT, which has a lot higher flesh damage, because you're not going to be able to kill the opponent in a reasonable amount of time with such a slow fire rate. An SPBT, at 27 penetration, it's only really enough to reliably penetrate level 3. Whereas FMJ, at 33 penetration, it takes it to that next level to have a better chance to penetrate even those level 4 helmets. In terms of reliability at least, I definitely go for a slightly more expensive bullet, but a much higher penetration chance. Moving on to the next caliber, we have 7.62x39. Which the RPDN uses. Similarly to the 7.62x54, I also recommend the highest penetration chance with the PSGZH at 35 penetration and 61 flesh damage. If it gets through the helmet or any armor on the head, even with the damage reduction from going through armor, it'd still have enough flesh damage to be able to one-shot. Now I wouldn't really recommend using the US or FMJ, simply because the penetration is just a lot lower than what PS offers, even though PS is a little bit more expensive. To put it into frame of mind, 26 penetration can't even reliably penetrate a level 3 helmet, let alone a level 4 helmet. For US, even though it's basically at the cusp of reliably penetrating level 3, the same can't be said for level 4. In a game where time to kill is super low, you don't want to really give your opponent the chance to fight back. If your opponent manages to bounce off a couple of shots wearing a level 4 helmet because you're only at 29 penetration, that's probably going to be enough time for them to respond in kind and get a kill on you. And also, the RPDN also doesn't have a fast fire rate, so trying to go the flesh damage route with the HP bullets, it's also not going to be a very good idea. And also compounding onto that, the flesh damage isn't very high for this bullet either, at 80 flesh damage. So that's going to take quite a few bullets to the legs to actually get a kill, which isn't going to be really possible because everything could end in just one bullet. And our last caliber that we're going to go over is the 545x39. Same story basically. You want to go for the highest penetration chance possible because the playstyle that you're going to want to adapt for running LMGs is aiming for the face and getting a headshot. All of these other rounds give you a progressively lower chance to actually succeed in that goal. PS, pretty comparable flesh damage, but much lower penetration chance, and it's also not that much less than a single bullet of PP. So no real justification for going for PS bullets. Similarly, US is far worse at 17 penetration, so it can't even penetrate level 2 armor reliably, like your Death Shadow face mask. The fire rate is pretty low for the RPK, so flesh damage bullets, there's not a whole lot of justification for trying to use flesh damage rounds. So now we're going to talk about the weapons themselves and what I think about them. So to start it off, we're going to go with the PKP and PKM. I'm going to group these two together because in their base configuration, meaning the parts that they usually start with, yeah, their stats are different. But if you actually put on the same attachments for both the PKM and PKP, they have the exact same stats. So that's going to be my justification for treating them as the same weapon. This is a very heavy weapon, probably the heaviest in the game, at 12.5 kilograms. So trying to swing this thing around is going to be pretty cumbersome and clunky, especially if you're used to more lighter weapons like SMGs and pistols. If you're playing on a lower mouse sensitivity, this might be a little bit of a problem for you, but if you have a higher mouse sensitivity, this probably wouldn't even be an issue for you. Next up, your ergonomics. This is pretty low. I didn't exactly mod for ergonomics, so aiming down your sights is going to be a pretty slow and agonizing process. Your accuracy is actually very good at 0.96 MOA, so your potential spread is very small. Now your recoil is very high at 353 horizontal and 95 vertical recoil. I would not recommend just full sending, full auto, hold down left click. That's probably not going to result in very many kills. You have a pretty slow fire rate at 650 RPM. If you want some context, this is the exact same fire rate as 545 AKs. So your AKS-74s, your AKS-74Us, those Draco looking AKs, that's the exact same fire rate. So if you're not a fan of those, you might not be a fan of how slowly the PKP fires. The playstyle that you're going to want to adapt is mobility. The thing that our minds immediately shoot to when we have a heavy weapon like the PKP is to try to be stationary. Now this is a pretty bad idea, and the reason why is because if you decide to become stationary and hold down a point, a much more skilled player is going to be able to quickly peek at your location, get the information down of where you are, and then re-peek that location again and quickly kill you because they know where you are. Now I'm not telling you to run around like a headless chicken, especially since your loadout is super heavy. This is probably a surefire way of getting you killed basically every single encounter that you have, because if you didn't know, the heavier you are, more noise you make. And also if you're running, that's going to make even more noise. So you don't want to be running around all the time. You're going to want to be walking as much as you can, but if you need to cover a distance of open space, those are the situations where you want to be running. Otherwise, think of it like this. If there's a lot of times in this area where you've run into an opponent, you might want to walk in that area. Also, going back to the ergonomics, and also going back to the aiming, for the PKP and PKM, there is a very annoying mechanic where you'd have to transition your hands to allow you to actually aim. So that takes up a couple seconds, and usually by the time you've aimed down your sights, the person's either gone or you're probably already dead because you've taken so long to aim. A playstyle that a lot of people adopt, me included, is that just throw on a tactical device and try to just go for hip fires. And it's actually quite feasible because your gun is very accurate. And two, tactical devices really do help with that bullet spread. Now, I really like the Maul. If you're a fan of being able to see your tactical device being on, it has a green laser mode, so you could actually make that visual distinction. But if you're more a fan of thermals and not seeing your tactical device, it also has modes for that as well. So it's very versatile. Also, being a light machine gun, you have quite a few bullets to work with per magazine. In this case, you have 100 bullets, plus one in the chamber, so 101 bullets. Usually this also means that you can be more carefree with your bullets, meaning you could adopt tactics like feinting out your opponent, where they think you're out of ammo, but really you're just baiting them in for an easy kill. And also, it means that you don't have to reload. Basically, when you're out of bullets, just get yourself killed so you can get a fresh new start. Alright, so next up is the RPDN. This is the build that I did my testing with. As you could probably tell, this is 762x39 PS. However, I did not actually test this build with PS. I was actually using US in the background footage because of that -30 recoil. I don't really notice that much of a difference. You should probably just go for the PS bullets because it has a much higher penetration chance. So it'll give you a lot higher chance of penetrating those level 4 helmets and a higher level armor. So what did I like about the RPDN? It's the highest fire rate LMG in the game right now, and also you get access to a lot better bullets, 35 penetration compared to the slightly lower penetration of 545 PP at 34 I think it was, and 762x54 FMJ at 33 penetration. At least against armor, the RPDN running PS is going to be, on paper, a lot better than everything else. The recoil is also not as bad as the PKP and PKM because it fires a much smaller bullet. So if you really wanted to, you could hip fire quite accurately if you have a tactical device on. And of course also you have a 100 round mag capacity. If you think about it intuitively, it's kind of the same as bringing 3 mags. So although one drum mag sounds pretty bad, it's actually pretty comparable to what people would normally run anyways. Now the downsides of the RPD is that there's not much modding you could do. You're kind of stuck with the really low ergonomics and this recoil as well. which is why I don't have an optic. I'm only hipfire when I'm using this weapon. This is to help save a little bit more on those rating points because a lot of these optics cost at least a couple hundred rating points. So that's the equivalent of like 10-ish bullets. So lastly, for the LMGs, we have the RPK-16. This is the build that I went with for the testing, and the bullets in this drum mag are 545 PP at 34 penetration, 51 flesh. So although they're not that great because they can't reliably penetrate level 4 helmets for those headshot kills, so what did I actually like about the RPK-16? The RPK-16 is definitely the most moddable out of all of the LMGs that you could use. So because of that, you could afford to do a variety of builds. If you want to go extreme ergonomics, you could do that. If you want to go extreme recoil reduction, you could also do that as well. Or if you just want a more balanced build, you could do that too. I decided to go for a more balanced build because I didn't want my recoil to be too high, but I also didn't want the process of aiming down your sights to be agonizingly slow as well. Now the negatives about running the RPK is that you don't have access to the greatest bullets, so you're going to have to aim for those headshots in order to have a chance at getting a kill. A lot of people are running level 5 armors, level 6 armors, so at 34 penetration, you really stand no chance at penetrating those high level armors at such paltry penetration levels. Like with all the other LMGs that we've reviewed, you basically have to resort to being a headhunter. Only aim for headshots and neck shots. Also, the fire rate is on the slower side at 650 RPM. Remember, it's the same fire rate as a lot of the 545 AKs, so if you don't like those 545 AK fire rates, then you're not going to like the RPK-16 either. Now, just to conform with all of the other playstyles that I used for the other LMGs, I decided to just stick with a hipfire approach for this one as well, and it performed relatively well because lets you spray for a longer amount of time, accuracy by volume. One of those bullets will probably clip your opponent in the head. So BSU recently added in the M60 to Arena, and by I mean recently, it's like a couple hours ago at this point. So the M60 is kind of just shoehorned into this video. But what do I like about the M60? Well, for one, the M60 is a slow firing weapon, so that means that the recoil is also pretty low as well. If you want to full auto spray somebody, whether it's hip fire or aiming down sights, it's completely doable. And it's also a pretty accurate weapon at 1.32 MOA, so your bullets won't really spread that much either. Now those are really the only positives that I have to say about it. Yeah, it has that 100 round magazine, but that's already pretty par for the course for the rest of the LMGs, so that's, I guess you could say it's hardly a positive. Where it really starts to go bad is, first off, the weight. 12.08 kilograms, so very heavy for my American viewers. It's roughly double that in pounds, so about 20 something pounds. It's quite a heavy weapon. And also, the ergonomics is very bad. 22.5 even with an SI Cobra foregrip, which gives you one of the highest ergonomic bonuses, +9. If the Cobra can't fix it, then nothing could fix it. Especially in the beginning, you really can't do much modding at all. And even if you can mod after leveling up the M60 a bunch of times, these bonuses +2 ergonomics and like it's just ergonomic bonuses that barely amount to anything. You're probably only going to get up to like 30, mid-30s kind of ergonomics, and that's still very slow, especially for a weapon that's so heavy. Even if you do put on a better optic, your aiming is going to be very slow, and that could get you killed because, you know, your opponent's running pretty decent ergonomic assault rifles or SMGs. They're going to be zooming past you and you won't be able to kill them. And also, that really slow fire rate does come to bite the M60 in the rear, because yeah, slower fire rate generally means better recoil, but the problem is that it's firing a little bit too slow. 550 RPM is even slower than the UMP at 600 RPM. Combined with the fact that the Enforcer class does not give you very good bullets, the best bullet that you could get as a refresher is BCP FMJ, 35 penetration, I think 84 flesh damage. If you do not hit those headshots, you will be killed. It's not going to go through those level 4 on level 3 body armors. Your opponents are just going to be able to continuously eat those bullets. And that slow ergonomics isn't making it any easier for you because you can't aim fast enough to get accurate shots. So what can you do? Basically, it's the same thing as with all of the other LMGs. Except for the RPK, of course. You are going to have to try not to use your sights at all. It's way too slow and it's going to get you killed when you're trying to acquire a good sight picture. Just put on a tactical device, hone your hip fire skills, and pray that you hit a headshot. One thing that I noticed when I did try to do hip firing is that compared to a lot of the other weapons, maybe it's just because I'm not used to it yet, you do have to aim a little lower than you normally would when you hip fire. I feel like I should make that apparent for anyone else who's new to it as well. So in summary, it's more of a bad weapon than it is a good one. There's just way too many negatives right now for it to be feasible, especially in arena where everything is so confrontational. You don't really have a whole lot of wiggle room to get sneak shots on people and get the drop on them. So really right now, really bad ammunition, fire rate's really low, it's not that great. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm just not going to test the E6 model because I'm going to assume it's kind of like the PKM and PKP. The only reason why the stats are different for the E6 is because it has different parts on it. I'm going to make an assumption that if I were to put the same parts on the E6 as I would the Mod 1, the stats would be exactly the same. Maybe sometime in the future I'll actually try to unlock the E6, and if it is a little bit different than the Mod 1, I'll make sure to let you know in the comments. If you've made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something new. Also, something that I wanted to talk about is that if you notice from the beginning of the video till the end of the video, the editing got progressively worse. And the reason why is because with the wipe coming soon, and most likely they're going to wipe Arena as well, I want to get everything out as quickly as possible for all of the categories, just so that when we look back on this stuff in the future, we could see how this era of Arena was like. I hope it didn't impact the viewing experience that much. If it did, please put it in the comments and let me know so I could focus on correcting those parts in the video for the next ones. Anyways, thanks again for watching. Take care.